afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important hour and a half of your day. I'm Michael, the MC and Opportunity Ambassador for today's adventure. Today's show, Conjuring the Magic of Collaboration, continuance of the introduction to ethical emergence. Now, before we get into that topic, let's talk to my co host. First is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
Nice to be here.
Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hi, everyone.
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
That's a love, everybody. Great to be with you.
Dennis, what time is it where you're at?
It is a little bit after 1 in the morning.
So
That's
if he looks a little
dedication.
tired,
That's dedication right there. But
if
think
you
about
are,
it.
oh,
All of the
right,
famous radio stars, they started at the 1 o'clock in the morning show. So
absolutely.
And it also gives you a perfectly valid excuse for like dozing off and kind of, taking a nap for a couple seconds.
Oh, thank you so much. Now that I know.
To those of you that are viewing live or who are viewing live and that would like to ask a question or put out a comment, we encourage you to do so, and we'll try and keep up with that as the show goes on. But with that said, let's get into the topic. Again, this is an introduction to something that I've put together, my course called Ethical Emergence. And the vision of ethical emergence is to help people discern value from harm and allow them to embrace and incorporate the benefits of beneficial habits and practices into their lives and allow their good ideas to become reality. In doing so, allowing them to understand their infinite potential. Ethical emergence is a concept that focuses on 7 areas. Monday we talked about the first three, and today we're going to cover the next three with just a little bit of a tick into the seventh one. But what I'll ask right off the bat, and I'll ask this to everybody: what is it that makes a human human? Has anybody got any ideas? How about you,
the
Dennis?
frontal lobe.
That's a good one.
The awareness, the potential awareness of the opportunities we have as holistic beings would be on the top of my head. Like others, and probably one could probably argue some of the members of our species as well are not completely aware of the opportunities that we have as human beings, and of how to develop them. But then I would say, as a full human being, we're tapping into the possibilities that we have. We're not just flesh and blood and human beings. We're not just physical beings, but we're much more than that. And to be aware of that, I think is a foundation and an opportunity that animals, for instance, would not have seemingly.
Well, there is something I didn't hear. I mean, I do believe that that's accurate, and certainly I think reason is one of the things. We have the ability to reason, which I think animals and plants, at least nobody's suggested that they do have that capability. But the thing that I wanted to touch on is something called time binding. We're time binders. Humans are time binders. And as opposed to animals, which are space binders, they maybe I should go back to plants. Plants are energy binders, so they use like chemical compositions and stuff like that to grow and the photosynthesis of the sun and everything. Whereas animals are space binders. They're like unlike plants, they have the ability to move around. But humans are time binders. And this is something that I just recently discovered under the title of General Semantics, which I mentioned the author of that, Alfred Korzybski. Um, he puts this idea together, and if you want to learn more about that, I'd suggest you Google it. But the idea of time binding is something that it kind of suggests that our role as a human isn't necessarily just for our own purposes, but to actually kind of elevate humanity to a higher, more important consciousness and wisdom. And if we learn something, then we share it. It becomes wisdom, and it becomes wisdom of a greater, the greater community. And this is an area that I think really hasn't been examined. And if you look at Krzyzewski's work, it's pretty much been like put on the shelf for a large part. And even though I think it's some really valuable stuff, and certainly nobody's heard of time binding, it's certainly something that we should be doing much more examining upon, because I think if you look at our our humanity as a whole, what is our goal? Is it to become more conscious and more wise, or is it to become sheeple and conditioned to do the bidding of somebody else who apparently has some issues? But I don't know. Does anybody want to comment on that?
What's with the sleeping people today? I mean, really.
You got to get the energy level up.
Whew. No, seriously. I think that the ability to think for ourselves has been gradually and systematically eradicated from our existence. I mean, if you think about the fact that 100 years ago, most people knew how to make all the food, like make bread, make their own shoes, make, clothing, make machinery, fix machinery, everything was, you made your own clothes, and the clothes were adjustable to whatever size you gained or lost your, gained weight, lost weight. Everything was adjustable all the time. Everything fits you all the time. You made your own stuff. I mean, all of that kind of self-selection is being swallowed by the marketing machine, who now tells us how to wear, what to do, when to do it. It's fall now. Stop wearing white.
Yeah, I think there's there's like this there's the merging of everything into, I guess, what you'd call normal, where even the sexes are being merged into one, and we're losing our uniqueness, and that's really our strength, is our uniqueness. And it's not only our strength, it's our community's strength too, because if we all have expertise and we all have knowledge about particular things, that not only makes us an essential person, but it's also an essential piece of our community. And so, like, we should be encouraging people to be much more unique, and then also how to how to take that puzzle piece and put it into the bigger puzzle, so that it works, it benefits, so that they realize that they have a tremendous amount of value, and everybody around them, everybody in the community, understands there's a tremendous amount of value. And that's really kind of what these three areas of concern are in regard to ethical emergence. Is the first three are more about the inner work within yourself, getting yourself better, and regaining your own level of self-control and
You mean
discernment.
autonomy?
Yeah. And then the second half is really kind of working together with others. And so the fourth area is called superpower groups. And this is there's a lot of stuff about superpower groups and teamwork and all that kind of stuff. But what I want to focus on today is just one of those areas, and it's what I like to call the power of three. And so when when we get together, let's see, I actually have a little diagram here.
You're going to share your screen?
I will share my screen.
That's so exciting.
Let's see here if I can figure out where to share it. There we go. I've got to do this.
Ooh, look at you.
Okay, so the basic concept here is, you got a great idea. There's a decision and there's action to be taken, and then the result is either an excellent outcome or a poor outcome. And unfortunately, with all the circumstances that we've got today, and I'll explain this, we're in a situation where, for the most part, probably 9 out of 10 of every instances, or even greater than that, a poor result. A good idea basically gets wasted because people are in a situation, and we've talked about this on various ways, but the individual, and I guess this would be a symbol of the individual, partnership, and then team. Okay. But as an individual, on average, most people are traumatized. They have poor communication skills. They're socially inept and really kind of turn towards that. They have emotional cues. They would be considered selfish. And of course, they've got this problem of learned helplessness. So they're kind of in a victim mentality. And so if you have a group of people like that, well, it's almost guaranteed that they're not going to do very well if they've got a great idea and they want to try and implement that into the world. And so the opposite of that is actually have good communication skills, have a comfort in a social environment, be able to control your emotions or at least understand them, have a abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset, which leads to self-confidence and willpower. And then when it comes to partnerships and teamwork and essentially creating a community, you're building a level of trust. You're understanding, like within a community, you're putting together standards of trust and healthy conflict and commitment and accountability, win-win results and constant improvement, which leads to excellent results. And in fact, if you do all that stuff, if you do that work and you address all those areas, it's almost like the whole thing is flipped, and it's 9 out of 10 are succeeding rather than failing. And so, the potential for this is tremendous. But to me, it is one in which it's a question of really your daily habits, your daily practices. Let's see if I can hit the button that makes this thing go away. All right. And the we've lost so many of our understandings of so many beneficial things that are really kind of inherent in us. We are social animals. We're kind of tribal in nature, but those have all become foreign to us because of all that conditioning that we've been subjected to incessantly for practically our entire lives. And then you add in all the trauma and everything else, and it's incredible that we're still even breathing, but the reality is that there's a great deal of potential. And that's what I'm really about is convincing people that they have so much unrealized potential. It's like that, the picture I showed the other day with the fish or the bird. You think you're a fish, but no, you're a bird. And you don't have to live in the swamp. You can fly and like travel the entire world. The difference in potential of adopting the higher consciousness is immense. And there's just so many things. I used, again, calling on my experience as a construction guy. The average construction worker kind of hated going to work because it is in a lot of construction jobs painful to go to work every day because people are angry, people are yelling at each other, there's always fights going on, there's people trampling over each other's stuff, you know somebody puts something somewhere and somebody else moves it and then they damage stuff. So there's all kinds of things that can go wrong, and that to me is kind of like an assessment of our current society. It's like nobody seems to know what's going on. Everybody's kind of bumping into each other, and
You're saying they're all fish?
well, I think to a large part, a lot of us have got fish mindsets in a lot of different areas, and this is
Maybe that's
reflected
what this
in.
show should have been called. Do you have a fish mindset? But I must say, that fish on the diagram was a little retarded looking. Oops, I shouldn't have said that word. Well, little challenged.
Some trouble.
A little. It had no eyeball.
That's not politically correct at all.
It may not be politically correct, but
in relation to that fish, it was accurate.
The definition of the word, when not being used as an insult, it does mean below average or held back.
And that fish was certainly held back, that's for sure. No. You guys have to watch the show from Monday if you want to see that fish. That was a special fish.
I'm so glad we're not raising political correctness.
Imagine us on a show that says raising political correctness. I think that would be a disaster.
To be honest, I think the PC culture is one of the most dividing things you can possibly do to our communities, because you're picking one colloquial language and you're demanding that everyone around you use your colloquial language so that you feel better. And that just limits you. It turns you literally into a fish, or like using your reptilian brain, like you're just stuck in the same thing over and over again. Yep. And it's not good or productive for society.
Yep. Very spot on what you're talking about, Michael. At least, if I understand where you're going. And what came to my mind a while ago is unity, the definition of unity. Is unity if everybody acts, looks and says and thinks the same, or is unity something, when we talk about unity within diversity, like is it possible to have unity, while maintaining your uniqueness, while not having to compromise or having to adapt to a certain form to be informed, to be put in a form that somebody or like a system tells you how you have to act and think and work around, or is it the awareness of that we are part of that everyone carries that, let me just say, a divine spark, that's what unites us, that the potential that we have, that you talked about a little while ago, is something that unites us already. We don't have to, run around in the same shoes or drive the same kind of cars or, have the same political opinions or whatever it is in order to have this awareness of unity with everyone else around us. But we can be our own self, we can express ourselves freely, and still be connected and be aware of that connection that we have to everything living around us.
I don't know, because that's the divine spark is something we have in common, certainly. But I think true unity is from having the same goals, right? There are many people who still have that divine spark who do not share my ideals or my goals, and they may have goals that I would consider nefarious, for example. And so I think that with, at least goals that I can sign my name under, I'm not saying to match all of my goals, but at least to have some kind of an understanding,
Well, but even if they don't have the same goals, because our goals also, may change, during our lifetime or so. But what is that one common thing that we have that doesn't change, that unites us, wherever
to help each other.
I think when you mentioned like that understanding, that's closer to the connection. That's a closer definition, because give me a second, I lost my train of thought. Nope, lost it. It went out the window. Maybe it'll come back later.
Well, what I would suggest is um, that in regard to like the idea of superpower groups and this idea of really being able to harness the power of relationships. There is, like what I talked about with the meaningful communication. That's like a one-on-one connection. But really, like when we really get to like supercharge the relationships, it's really kind of the power of three. And I'm talking about like three perspectives, like the mother, father, child. The fact that the child gets two different perspectives gives them a much more robust understanding of the world than if they just had one parent. And so there's something that's really important about three. And certainly in an environment where we're in a like a false dichotomy at almost every level. If you put two people together, almost always one's going to be right, and they're going to think the other one is wrong, there's really no way to bypass that. And this is also a kind of relation from my own experience of like trying to assign people to do work. If I assign one person to do something, or I've got a task and I say, hey, come over here. Do you need, we need someone to take care of that. Do you understand what you need to do? And have them attempt to do it. Most likely it won't happen. Whereas if I engage two people, if I ask that person, or I ask the person and his assistant, or I got my assistant and that person, if there's just three people and we have a meeting of minds and we discuss what it is and then we ask questions amongst each other, the chances of that job being performed has has gone up immensely. It's like 90, 95, 98% likely that it's going to happen, because we've achieved a much greater level of understanding. And then we've also added like an agreement and a commitment and almost a like a mitigating body that is the third person. And so to me, this is kind of this is something that really you've got to experience to really feel the power of it. But it is incredible in the circumstances that we're in, because we've been fed this false dichotomy, this like polar opposite kind of relationships and in everything. We're constantly thinking there's two sides to everything, and by adding that third, you get that third perspective that kind of like throws everything out of whack, and then makes it possible for people to have a much greater understanding. And so to me, that's kind of one of the first elements of people grasping what the real power behind collaboration is and how important relationships are. uh, that's when it really starts to kick in and people start to understand. And so like I've started off talking about a construction job being like a constant fight. I had that opportunity where I was able to integrate this kind of approach. And before long, people were working together, like even like the oddest couples of people, like you've got union you know contractors working with non-union Mexican contractors, that they absolutely in general hate each other. But I had that circumstance where these guys were working together, they were sharing food, they were having lunch together, and the job environment changed incredibly, and then the productivity, the level of quality, and the budget, every single thing was improved because people got to work together and create an environment that's synergistic. So to me, superpower groups, there's a lot to it, there's a lot of other things that go into this. I'm just kind of trying to scratch the surface and
So
give
is
people
that
an
is that what
opportunity.
you do when you say superpowers on? That saying that you say, is that related to it?
That's just my own practice. for my own self. And I feel like everybody should have a kind of a ritual that they get into on a daily basis that, kind of makes them feel good about themselves and makes them feel like they're, you know, uh, living
So
their
what's the
purpose.
saying that you say to yourself? What's your mantra?
System check, superpowers on. But
Check
that's like a
superpowers on.
10-minute ritual that I do that includes like some exercise and some meditation and a little bit of what I would call self-care, self-maintenance. But I go through all these different things in over like a 10-minute period, and then then I'm like walking out, like Superman out of the telephone booth. At least
So
that's the
is
way I
that, do
feel.
you do that several times a day?
Well, honestly, if well, I try and do that like at least once a day, usually during the beginning. And then if things get really difficult and I start to forget, oh, geez, I forgot that I had superpowers, then yeah, I probably do like a 30-second system check and superpower on, reboot and get it back to speed.
What's
But
your
when it,
what's your favorite superpower?
well, I just say my problem solving is probably my greatest superpower. I can listen to problems and try and diagnose the thing. And you know, my father was a mechanic, and he was like a magic man when it came to car problems. And so he would, like somebody would come to him and say, "Yeah, I got a problem with my car. It's like a squeak, or it turns to the left, or something, whatever it is." And my father would kind of have an idea and say, "Okay, let's go take a test drive." And you know, he'd figure it out. And if he didn't figure it out, he'd say, "Well, why don't you just leave your car? I'll drive yours. You can drive mine. I'll take it over the weekend." And before long, he'd figured it out. And it might be something so obscure that you'd think it was impossible to figure it out, but he'd figure it out. And so I kind of, from that point of view, I take that kind of problem solving skill to, construction and then ultimately project management.
Nice.
So to bring
Sam,
it back to the project
hang
management,
on. I want
um,
to know what your guys' superpowers are first, because if we're
Yeah.
gonna talk about superpowers, let's like feel
Amen.
into the superpowers. What's your superpower, Dennis?
what's my superpower?
Your
Uh,
favorite superpower, not because you have many. I know many, but what's the one you rejoice in the most?
well, I would say that's really up. On, that really depends on the day,
Is it too
on the
late in the
situation.
morning?
See, this is where this is where I begin with a lot of people. Is like, I ask them to tell me about themselves, and it's like, man, you don't even know what your strengths are. Come on, man. You
I'm
really
not.
need to be able to sell who you are and represent like what it is that is valuable that other people could benefit from. And like the more that we communicate with other people, the more we should be able to you know communicate what it is that how we bring value to the world that could help other people so that they can then lead other people to us if they need us.
And I didn't ask him for his top 100 favorite strengths. I just asked for one. I mean, seriously.
He
Yes.
is a little sleepy though, so we'll give him a little bit of credit.
Mine would
Sam,
be what is the superpower needed at this moment right now, for this group? Because
Staying
like if
awake.
I treat with individuals, it's like okay, like and you went there a while ago. It's like okay, what do you need right now? Like how can the skill set and experience that I have, help you in this moment for you, to step forward. So
maybe
when
that's
you
your
ask me,
superpower, to understand what skill set to use for any given moment.
yeah, yeah, could have
Flexibility
it.
of or adaptability to the situation. I would say that's probably one of your superpowers. I'm thinking about Jamaica and Brazil and how you adapted to those situations. I think adaptability probably would be one of your
Yeah.
top strengths.
My what I would say is how you can turn trash into treasure. That's a freaking superpower, you know.
Cool.
Willow, what are yours? What's your favorite superpower?
I'm not sure, cause like, do you know how in all the stories when you have a superpower, it takes a long time to realize that it is a superpower, and most people just think it's a curse.
Are you gonna like call youth? I'm too young to know what my superpower is.
No, I don't. Like I was saying, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's the only one I can think of right now. But it's just this strange ability to be able to see and hear what people are trying to put out or trying to say
That's the
versus
same
what they're actually
superpower.
saying.
That's the same superpower I was thinking you have.
Yeah,
Just
I
being
don't know
able
what to
to
call it.
understand people's expressions. Like when I
'Cause
come
it's
to
not
you
just
and I say
expressions;
stuff,
it's
but
thought
it's like,
patterns.
yeah,
It's
what I put
it's the
out,
way
you
that they talk.
pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I,
expressions.
I think you've expressed that you have this in unthirst or unsatiable need to learn when it comes to something that you're curious about.
Yeah, I don't think that's unique about me though. I think that's like when
But
people
it's a
find their calling, they'll feel that too.
no.
Um, but I guess another thing that just popped into mind, a label for that was when I was looking through like the witch, like what kind of witch would you be? I kept getting augury witch a lot, which is an interpreter,
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be
and my
accurate.
name in Hebrew actually my birth name in Hebrew actually means listener, I think. So I thought that was really interesting.
That's cool. And do remember that one of the follies of youth is to think that your talents are commonly had by many other people.
You mean I'm alone?
No, I mean you're
You're
more
unique.
talented than you think you are.
Oh, okay. I guess that's a payoff.
Cause like when I was younger, I thought everybody knew how to write well, and I thought like that wasn't special. Like I can't sell that skill because everybody like writing is something you learn in elementary school. So how is that special? And drawing is something lots of people do. That's not special. You know what I mean? All my top talents, I was like, that's not special. But it turns out now that I'm in my 40s, it's bloody special. Who knew? Who knew that grown adults don't write as well as I do? I didn't know that. I thought every single person in the world could write as well as I do until I was literally like 40. So,
So what is your favorite superpower?
my favorite superpower is being able to put together, like, I have the eagle eye sight and I hold a lot of information in my head. So you can give me like a tiny little thing and I'll be able to see this whole scenery around it. Like, for example, if I'm writing a sentence for a website or for an email, right? I can sort of envision the people's reactions as they're reading the email. I can visualize different groups of people and envision different reactions that they might have to this email, to these sentences. Feel into the older lady. Is she going to use those words, or maybe is she going to find them offensive? You know what I mean? Or a younger person, are they going to think it's boring or outdated? So I can sort of tune into different people. And it's the same thing I do with psychosomatic therapy. I sort of, like, you give me that one little thing, oh, I have this one issue, and I give you this sort of broad viewpoint of, you can do this physically to help this issue. It's also this mental construct that you're carrying, and it's also this spiritual baggage that you may also be carrying. So there's such a depth of analysis with every little, like when you guys come up to me with a sty or something on your foot or whatever, you know what I mean?
Which we did earlier today.
That's why it's the example.
And to
Your
back up your
superpower.
claims, because I was the sty, and she told me to put chamomile on the part that was swollen, and within like a day and a half, it was already reduced and gone. So she's right in some cases.
I think I don't think there's one she's gotten wrong that I can think of.
So far,
Yeah,
the day will come.
it's no,
I
it's
can't be right all the time.
but it's valuable advice. So let's move on. So the next step after we get past superpower groups, and certainly, like I said, there's a lot of different stuff, and really this started, it was spurred on by, a little shout out to Bob Podolsky and his idea of the octalog, in trying to get people to the point that they could understand how to work together in an octalog. This is where ethical emergence really started from. I was just the idea of how to get people prepared for, being in the octalog. But it's become a much bigger picture. So
Can you
then the fifth,
explain? Can you explain before you go to the fifth point? Can you
sure.
explain the words ethical emergence? Like, what exactly do you mean by that? Because it's not just ethics; it's more like savoir-faire, like how to carry yourself, right?
Well, I would think of it as is like that picture of the water, like the bird that's been underwater for so long, emerging from that water into the air, and like stretching its wings out and actually being able to fly for the first time. And so that like emergence from that lower consciousness into the higher consciousness is really about, the ethical component is really the difference. It's between like understanding why love is more important than fear, and why joy and learning and enlightenment are all much better than being angry and hating and being fearful. And so, it's unfortunate, but a lot of people just really don't grasp how much that is taken from their life, being in that mindset that's, negative. I don't know. Did that explain it?
Yes, and I had a great idea for your graphic that you had the other day, so I'm just jotting it down so I don't
Okay,
forget.
great.
And
The
we'll
one
show
that
it.
was held back.
No, the one with the fish.
That was held back.
All right. Well, so my fifth a is what I would call process or method, and that is one in which it really is kind of the stage I'm in at the moment with ethical emergence. Is like, okay, well, I had a lot of success, but how did I actually do it? And this is, it's there's a lot of different things to creating and understanding and observing the process, and how you actually do the things that you do that make magic. But then by studying it, you start to realize, you start to get a bigger picture, which is much more long term in nature, and again is actually kind of a moral consequence, which affects, your daily routine again. And so like when you think long term, you really do grasp a more moral outcome.
Bless you, Dennis.
And and so, like for example, I've started people off with the idea of journaling, and like as I have, I've got about, I don't know, 15 of these notebooks over in my closet. But like when I get done with one of these things, I actually got to catalog all these ideas that are in this thing that I wrote down. And so then I create like a table of contents at the first page. And so I have to review, go through everything, and kind of, like star, oh yeah, this is a great idea. I should definitely, have a refer to that. And this thing over here that I discussed when I talked to so and so, that was really important. So yeah, that was on page 15, blah blah blah. But now that I've done that enough, I can like say my process is one in which now when I take notes and knowing that I'm going to do that, I start making, I like star things. I'll make a little note on the side, make sure to put this in. And so now I can go through, what used to take me, sometimes days, sometimes even weeks to catalog a notebook. It might take me like a half hour now, because I've I understand what I'm doing, and I understand it from a long-term perspective. So now I can incorporate the things that help me facilitate that whole process and make it go so much quicker and easy that it's, again, it's like magic. and it just makes it so much more productive. And that's kind of an understanding of mastery, or really kind of another word for it would be the aesthetics of a philosophy. Where is the beauty in this? It's in the art or the mastery. And so like the process is really becoming the master. Like when you can put the process together and you can explain the process to other people, you are mastering it. And that's really an important thing, because then it's also kind of transferring this knowledge from you to other people. And that is another level of higher consciousness, is kind of like creating wisdom that then other people can utilize. And when other people can utilize it, and see the value as well, then you've really kind of elevated yourself, and you've elevated the people around you to another level of awareness and consciousness. But let's talk about process for
That
you
sounds
guys.
boring.
Okay, how about method?
Okay,
Method is
okay,
another
method.
word.
Just teasing.
A lot of people say, what is the method to your madness? And of course, that's kind of got a negative connotation. But what do you guys have as
What is the
methods? If you,
process to your passion?
yeah, there you go.
Okay. Well, I kind of like the journaling thing. It's really growing on me, even though I'm very resistant.
Mm-hmm.
And I like my little colored papers where I write for each project. I write notes on the colored paper. That works for me. It's easy to keep them together.
Yeah, well, again, this is, like in my course and when I'm working with people, this is one of those areas where you got to kind of draw it out of them. You got to kind of get them comfortable with understanding this thing, because to a large degree, a lot of people are hurried and are always on the run, and so they never really take the time to think about how they add value to different things. But this is really how you start to really understand like what it is that you do well, and what are really the priorities that you should be focused on. Because as you figure out the process, you're going to figure out that I do this kind of mediocrely. If I could get someone else to do that, then the end product would be so much better. So like, why am I doing that? Well, let somebody else do that. And then you start going through that process, you start figuring all that stuff out, and you start to really see, holy cow, I am just a super idea person. I should just be working on ideas all the time and let somebody else carry them out. Or maybe I'm a great builder, and I don't need to have ideas. I need someone else with the great ideas to come to me and let me build it for them.
That makes sense to me. Like, and one of the things that has been growing on me is putting it down on paper and making lists, or like the whole getting things done thing, or putting it on shelves and prioritizing and putting numbers on it, and then just having that, because ideas come to me all the while, but then the whole idea of not keeping them in your head and losing track of them, but just putting them on paper and continuously creating space for new ones to come in. That is something that has been really helpful for me.
How about you, Willa?
I thought that with all the time I had that I would come up with something, but I didn't. I think that might be my issue, is I haven't quite found a method yet. I have lots of techniques, and some days they work fantastic, and I still promote those techniques because I know that they do good. I just haven't found the one that I have clicked with yet. Well, I guess I take that back. Now that I said that, I'm like, my brain's like, oh, here's one. Getting outside and getting sunshine. I'm not really sure. I know it, like, like literally getting sunlight benefits because it allows your body to produce chemicals that you need. But there's something outside of that, I think, or maybe it's a side effect of that, that you literally just feel recharged. And I always try to be barefoot. That's probably my most consistent method. It's easy to do no matter what. It doesn't matter if you haven't been able to get out of bed and put on clothes. You don't need to. You don't have to put on socks and shoes. Go out barefoot and
Well,
just
let
be
me
outside.
ask you a question that I ask a lot of people that kind of gets it clear in their head. If you had a school of children that you were going to address somewhere in the future, and we said, okay, we're going to give you a half hour to give these kids some important speech about something that they should know, what would you talk about?
Accepting your feelings. Like, you don't have to be okay with them. You don't have to accept, you don't have to say that they're good or bad or you should or you shouldn't. Just labeling feelings. That's a better word. Labeling feelings. What does this feel like? What is this? Why does this possibly come out? And what does this actually mean? I think more people would be more receptive when they have these outbursts in adult life, when they know the proper label for it and what it means. They can retrace the steps back a little bit more. But I also think that's probably something that has been deliberately taken out of our schooling system
Yeah.
because, I mean, it is the Prussian schooling system. So
That's something
then,
tremendously
okay.
powerful. Sorry if I cut in. That just came to my mind. It's like if you're able to do that, to be aware of your feelings and to categorize them, label them, identify them properly, then for me the next logical step would then be, well, in that awareness, that must impact what you do. You're acting, right? So if in every moment, whatever you do, if you kind of feedback with yourself, or is that what I really love? Is that what I really want to do? Is that in line with who I am with the moment, or is that coming in with some kind of pressure or because of some kind of conditioning in the past? Then that really has a tremendous power of being in the moment and acting truly to in unison with who you are and with what you feel is right and is proper in that very moment.
Absolutely. And, I think, I think another thing in regard to the question I asked is like when you become the teacher and you have to like create the lesson plan for people to learn something, you really have to learn the material. You have to understand like what is valuable and what isn't. And then in applying it and having people ask you questions, you start to figure out like, okay, this area is weak. I need to do a little bit more work on that. I need to find out these things. And that's kind of what this part of it is when you're talking about creating processes or methods, it is really kind of creating the lesson plan of how you can teach other people what it is that's valuable that you can bring, you know. And
So
go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut in. You
No,
reminded
go ahead.
me of a method that I learned about, but I have not been able to put into practice yet. It was a breathing exercise. And basically what they had you do was sit in front of a partner and you would breathe and then they would watch you and then they would take their turn. Well, what would happen is the person who was watching got really focused in on watching and forgot to monitor their facial expressions. So the person breathing was watching their other person react to them breathing. And almost every single one of them said, "Am I doing it wrong? Like, why are you looking at me like that?" Like, and they didn't understand what the expressions were on this other person's face until they switched positions. And then the breather got to be the watcher and they realized, oh my God, that's what breathing and feeling calm looks like. And I don't exhibit that. And you get so caught up in like experiencing your own reaction to it and watching them that it kind of resets your neural pathways.
Yeah. 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 So that leads to the sixth area, which is what I call mentorship. You might call it stewardship, or or even, you know, kind of encompassing the whole thing, being the teacher as well as the student, to the point that you're an excellent mentor, means, you know, like having the whole concept in mind, so that like when you see somebody that is a student and they're struggling, you have an understanding and have that empathy, because you can identify, you know, and be humble yourself to kind of understand their position. So that in a lot of ways, a mentorship, being a good mentor, is one in which you're able to understand the student, you know, and understand where the student is at, and how difficult it is to, you know, learn and understand all the things that are going on, based on, you know, all the other things that could potentially be priorities. It's it's one in which there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity there. And so, like, for example, one of the things that I feel really strongly about in mentorship is something I would call being the advocate. And so, like, if you're a mentor to somebody, it's like where they're the student, but you see that they have potential, and so like you advocate for them to like get into another situation with maybe a client, or a opportunity where they can actually, you know, display that skill or ability that they have. And so in a lot of cases, they're not confident enough to like say, "Yeah, I can take on that project," you know, where a mentor could say, "Hey, I see some potential in this guy. Give him that project. You know, let him take it." And so that's one of the things that I think, you know, unfortunately, I have rarely seen when it comes to, you know, senior people that have a lot of skills and become master craftsmen. It's very rare that they are also a good mentor. But it's something that, man, if humanity could grasp that, man, we could really rocket into a whole another, you know, realm.
Yeah, it's true. Even like from a coaching perspective, you know, that's a side also one you know, can tap in from that, you know, kind of physical workout coach perspective. And like I'd agree totally. Like there's few who have the ability um to first of all, you know, put themselves in the shoes, so to say, of the student or of the one being coached, and then also teaching not like only from book knowledge that they would have you know, acquired and repeated, even if it's over many years or decades, but to really adapt, not only what but also how they transfer that knowledge and that wisdom to an individual. And they're that in itself is a superpower and is a skill. You know, I feel if you can discern, you know, the again, where is what do we have in common in terms of our shared humanity, you know, of our strength and our weaknesses, you know, what is the ability to cut through, you know, layers of, let's say, personality or of diverse expressions and, you know, of physical, emotional, mental makeup, and kind of make that connection and establish that connection, and then transfer exactly what is being, you know, needed for the one that you're coaching or mentoring to you know, to make his or her very own step forward, which is the next, you know, step on the ladder that they're on at the current moment.
Yeah, well, I imagine you with Capoeira and having students that are kind of that may show some potential. When you see something that they have potential, how do you go about like getting them to take that next step up, to you know, push themselves to really, you know, demonstrate their strength, or demonstrate something they really, you know, have finesse in?
True, and it's like for somebody it might be, you know, encouragement and let's go trying for somebody might help you. No, take it easy. We first have to, lay the foundation first. You want to do this, but you want to jump to D, but you have to do A, B, C first to have that foundation. So it's, that's a great way of putting it, because in my mind, that's also, right away, if you put it in that context, like all these situations like flare up, and like you're demonstrating it right now, because you're putting it kind of like in the realm of one of the expertise that I have, and it makes it very easy for me to grasp it and to come up with situations, with real life situations that would back up what you're just conveying.
Yeah. How about you, Agnieszka?
I don't have anything useful to add right now, but I have a cute dog.
I've noticed she keeps going in and out of this frame shot, but there's like two spots there's one behind you and one to your right. And she keeps moving back and forth in between those two spots, because it's almost like she knows that she can be seen. She's like, yes, I am part of this. You will like me.
Well, this will go out to a lot of entrepreneurs that I think kind of get stuck in this particular area, and that is that once they have a business that works, and they're kind of the center of the business, and it's like everything happens because they're there. But if they're not there, then nothing happens, or very little happens. And this is, these two things, creating the process and being a mentor, is how you release yourself from that enterprise and turn it into the business that it's supposed to be, that actually works for you, because it works your process and allows you to be free.
Okay, now I have something to add.
Okay.
So, no matter whether you're the mentor or the mentee, somebody who's trying to start a new venture, or somebody who's trying to figure out a new way to serve humanity by teaching them what they already know, the only way that you can actually be successful is through taking the energy from inside of you and feeling the flow of energy. I know that sounds terribly esoteric, but it really isn't. Being engaged in your life, being happy, being fully connected with the cute dog. Being fully connected with your passion, right? So when you're interacting with your mentor, when you're interacting with your mentee, you're completely engaged in the situation. You're very gung-ho to make it happen. You're not bored. You're not dejected. You're not checked out. You're creating the situation that can really help both of you grow and become better people.
Absolutely. Yes.
So I think in addition to process, focus and energy, passion needs to be involved and engaged. And it's not like a thing. Hang on a sec, Dennis. It's not like a thing that magically happens. If you want your passion to be engaged, you turn it on. You actually flip the switch. It's not going to flip itself. It's not something that, if you're not feeling passionate about what you're doing, do something that you're feeling passionate about. Because I guarantee there are things they're going to feel passionate about. And some things, it's just not going to click for you. Don't put your energy in stuff that's hard, because it, like, you know what I mean? Challenging, yes, but hard, like just not right for you? No. Dennis.
What came to my mind is the factor that those processes that you're talking about, establishing a process in order to have things run smoothly, even if you're not there. So it doesn't depend on your very own individual being there or input in the long run. That is something super valuable that I've experienced many times, looking at small and big organizations as well, and then, looking at it from a kind of social work, piecework perspective. There is a lot of organizations that will depend on a father figure or like somebody, and like the whole event or the project gathers around that one person being the center of it, and people look up to him or her, and things happen. But if he or she diverts or life happens, then the whole thing falls apart, because it depends on that they have not been able to establish a process that will ensure that the thing lasts, even independently of their presence. So what I And it's like my permaculture perspective that setting in there is, if you in order to facilitate establishing a process, I would argue that it's not necessarily something that you would have, you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, so to say, but is if you are able to align the process that you're seeking to establish with nature, if you embed it in nature, in human nature, in the natural world, let's say you're establishing something that is in alignment with what's happening already, or which is in alignment with what people are doing already naturally, then this is like a way of ensuring that people will do it anyway, because it's in their nature, and maybe they just have not been able to see or to understand, or they were not aware of something that's already happening. Let's say, the sun comes up and goes down every day, so you're able to establish a process that works in alignment with the factor that the sun is going up and down, or that it's raining so in so many weeks each year. So what kind of processes can you put into place that will harness that energy, that natural energy that is there? Or people in your household get up at naturally at this and that time of the day. How can we align what we do every day to that? So it's not something strenuous, but it's something that flows with what already is.
Anybody else?
I
I think
Sorry.
I think it's really important, because I think a lot of people, especially successful people, really don't grasp how important it is to really kind of define these things, so that they can kind of liberate themselves to move on to more important things. It's like they create something that they wish will happen, and then when that wish is granted, it's like they forgot how to wish for anything else. Now it becomes like a burden. And certainly in the world that we live in, with all the trauma and all the negativity and all the things, it's easy to become blinded to, like, okay, I'm a business owner, but I'm like a slave to my own creation. you know that that blindness to that is something that can be corrected. And then and it is such another level of liberation that can be had for just about everybody. And this is kind of the thing with that, with the hierarchy kind of mindset, and the scarcity mindset is one in which we're constantly assuming things that aren't necessarily true. But it's really kind of going through the process or method, and then mentoring people to take over those processes and methods, that we find you know like what we're really good at. And that's really kind of the seventh step, is being you. Is like really discovering who you are and what you're really empowered to be.
Okay, I have two thoughts right now. So, first of all, being a slave to your own creation is heavens better than being a slave to someone else's ideal or someone else's process.
I don't know. I don't know if you can really quantify that.
What do you mean? Like, if you're just going to work for somebody else and you're not working for your own heart, is different than when you're like maybe working really hard, but working for something that you built, you created, it was your idea, it was birthed out of your body.
But imagine looking at something that you once looked at with such love and it brought you such joy, and it becomes
a burden,
a manifestation of all the negative. Like, I really agree with Mike. Like, just watching something that used to bring you so much joy turn into something that brings you so much turmoil, I think that itself could be, to some people, more traumatizing than
you're saying it's better to work
being
for
a
somebody
slave.
Else.
No, I'm not saying either is better. I'm saying being a slave to anything is being a slave. It's not, that feeling will not change depending on your job. But I wanted to take this back just a second about how sharing what you getting out from underneath your own business and making it to where other people can take over. It reminds me of like this stage of grandparents where you're not supposed to be raising the children, you're not supposed to necessarily be working. You get to enjoy the things and you get to pass along the knowledge to the younger generations. That was the traditional role. And I really wanted to point out how traumatizing it could be to believe you have gained all this happiness and then to be re-traumatized and re-triggered by the fact that you still feel so alone because you can't explain it to other people. You can't share it with someone else. You have to do it. You have to do it all because you can't share it with anyone. No one else can know. And that alone can re-traumatize you, especially if you haven't healed and you've just worked your business. Like you've worked your entire life around your business to avoid dealing with your own unresolved issues.
Yeah. In a lot of, I think in a lot of cases, because we keep ourselves busy, we don't really take the time to address what things mean, you know. I mean, I used to work hard and make a lot of money because I thought, I need 2 houses, I need 6 cars, I need a swimming pool, I need all this stuff. But then, at some point I was just like, I don't need any of this stuff. This like holds me to these places because I've got all these bills to pay and all this stuff to maintain and stuff. And so like now, I don't have any cars. I don't have any houses. I
You
don't,
still got a swimming pool though.
I do have a beautiful swimming pool that I was in yesterday, pretty much all day, and really enjoyed it. But we can become a slave to the things that we think we want. And just because like that's what everybody else wants, well, I guess that's just where it ends.
I don't think it's
And
because
that's,
everybody else wants it. I think it's because everybody else was told that they want it.
yeah,
They were programmed to want these things.
yeah,
Nobody
yeah. So
might
it's
want
just,
it if it wasn't told to us that that's what we want.
yeah. So in a lot of ways, it's just the reflection of a lot of conditioning. And again, we just have to wash that off. And so like, one of the things is like people that wrote books, that was really their attempt. That was really kind of what I would suggest is like that process or method that then also that is like that time binding thing that I talked about earlier, where now I can go back and I can read a book from 1850 and I can get some really valuable information because that person took the time to write that stuff down that then I can utilize and combined with my own experience and all the other things that I know can, take me to another level. And so that is really where we kind of cross the boundary of what our existence really is. And where does it begin and where it ends? It's not really clear, you know, because our mentality could actually be passed on into other people, and our vision, our ideals can be passed on to other people, our children and so forth, and maybe our grandchildren, or maybe, the next door neighbor's children, who knows, depending on who saw the brilliance of what your method or process was.
Or maybe through universal consciousness, it permeates the whole global consciousness and everybody can pick it up after you think it.
Yeah, I think there's also something to that too. I've definitely experienced that where I thought something and then I noticed, hey, my friend thought that too at the same time. Amazing.
I found it a way of cutting through, desires seem to keep us, engaged and keep us, caught as well, like in the matrix of things. So not to say that it's bad to have desires, because it seems to be, something natural for most of us, if not all of us, to have desires. But like one thing to cut straight through is like, for me, is the notion of like, who is having that desire right now? who is desiring to swim in the pool, to eat the ice cream, to go there, to do this, to have cars, to have all that? Who is that? And that's something that helps me already to see, okay, there's a part in me that desires that, or that thinks it needs that, but that's not all of me. Is that, my true self, or is that, some part of me? Not to discredit it, but to say, okay, there's this desire for me to have 6 cars, like you said. So maybe, I have to fulfill this desire in order to satisfy, in order to see, feel, and okay, oh, that feels like that. But then, not to get stuck there. It's like, okay, now I have this, and to realize that, and I think you were hinting at that, which is oftentimes, we have a desire, and we actually, over time, we're able to manifest that desire, but by the time it comes and it has manifested, we already totally forgot about it. Like, we're already caught in the next one. It's like, oh, I need a house, and you have the house, oh, I need a car, and then you have the car, and oh, I need this and that, and then you're always in this more, and like looking for more. And without acknowledging like what you have achieved and what you have actually manifested, and I think you're touching upon that, like it's like missing out on that fantastic opportunity and that ability we have, of creating, the life that we're living. So to recognize that everything that we have and that we experience right now is actually, we are co-creators of our world. And we have created, all of our condition. If you take self-responsibility for that, it's a whole different ball game. And then, desires are sometimes, I guess it's good, to fulfill them, and to, okay, I have this need to have the cars, and you feel stuck, and you feel that you can't reach anywhere until you fulfill that desire. But then it's also to consciously look at it and say, okay, now I have it, and now what, am I satisfied, or is there still something, wanting something else or something more? Or am I even disappointed? And I think there is great lessons in that, in seeing, oh yeah, no, now I have all of this, but is it that? Is it as important? Is it as enlightening as it was supposed to be? Or is it just, okay, I can feel it like this, but who is feeling this right now? Who is feeling happy right now? And who is starting to feel kind of unhappy already, because there's already a different desire growing? And where do those desires come from, and what do they lead me to? So it's this whole process of unveiling and tapping into who we really are. I think that desires, fulfilling desires, or having unfulfilled desires, is really hinting at and is pointing us to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, just to review this whole thing, my intention is to really kind of create a circumstance in which people, so like individuals that I work with and go through the course, get the opportunity to really be introduced to themselves through these 7 areas in various ways, because it's not the same for everybody. There, and this is one of the things that I feel so strongly about is everybody is unique. And so I want to give everybody at least the opportunity to be very flexible about what it is they do. How they go about journaling is going to be different from one person to the next, and what works for them. Are they going to use notebooks, or are they going to use 3x5 cards? Are they going to use something else? Take pictures, or draw drawings, or do paintings, or do video blogs. There's all kinds of different ways that this information can be, fixed into our daily habits and practices. But the thing is that currently most of us are still relegated to a large part of our time being distractions, and being carried away by negative stuff. A lot of us experiencing the experience that we've had, a lot of our thoughts are drawn to these things that are really outside of our control. And what the heck is going on with all that? But it's really, that's another distraction that keeps us away from focusing on who we really are, and what are our really big strengths and skill sets and abilities, that if we really knew them, we could really knock it out of the park. If you've looked into John Taylor Gatto, for those of you in the audience, it's something that all of us at Autonomy have been exposed to a great deal. But John Taylor was an excellent school teacher. And what he did is he facilitated getting children curious about what's out there and what it is that they're excited about, what they love to do, and then creating their own kind of way of learning about that. And when he did that, he transformed these children who were considered lower class and, really kind of, destined to be, if at best, maybe middle class, into people that were, going to Harvard and, building businesses and doing all kinds of things that were really exciting and interesting, simply because he was able to kind of understand that each person is unique, and how do we help them realize that. That's kind of what ethical emergence is about. It's also about a lot of different things. It's also about improving people's ability to understand the difference between risk and value, or I like to use value and harm versus like risk and reward. I don't like the word reward a whole lot, but again, it's like as you look at your process, you might find that something that's going on is actually harmful to somebody. Maybe it's the way that you're managing your business is like creating a circumstance where somebody is being taken from their family because they've got strange hours or something like that. Well, in like your investigation and to find out what the process is, you come to that realization. It's an opportunity for you to fix those kind of things. And there again, it's also kind of, it's a renewal of like really being the example of the person that I think a lot of us would like to be, is the person that makes the good magic happen.
Where are you gentlemen talking about processes as in like a structure, step by step, things to do, where I know that both of you spend a lot of time tuning in, connecting, creating mind, not mind palaces, but mind constructs to bring you to where you want to be, like connecting with your higher self, deeper self, you know what I mean? That's not a process, that's more like a being thing, right? Or is that still a process?
How
Well,
would you define process then?
I don't know. Process to me is something very emeraldy, very like step by step. Step one, do this. Step two, do that. You know what I mean? It's not like well, maybe it is. Maybe I'm just thinking about it funny. It's not a being thing. It's a doing thing. So what I'm asking is, what about the being aspects of process?
well, I think there's two things. There's artistry and there's mastery, and you know those come from two different angles. Like mastery, I think would be what you would describe as emerald, and artistry is something. What would you? I don't know the other three
But
things
they're
very
not
well.
like the different types of personalities are not, they're not stacked like, oh, this one, and then when you get better you get to this one. It's just basically different aptitudes, different preferences of communication, you
I
know.
feel I feel what I've been trying to express is, using the words you just used, is doing or doingness being aligned with being. So, whatever you do, align it with who you are. And like, processes like whether it's the sun that they mentioned, like going up and down, like create processes or create your doing around that which already is, in order to align it, to not make it something strenuous. Because I think, not to say that is, again, not to label it, but if something is strenuous, then maybe you can find something else, or you can find a different way of doing it, so it doesn't feel strenuous in a negative way. So it flows. Like in my experience, like I would say I've been doing, and I still do, a lot of things that are strenuous, but I still feel good doing them. and it's a perspective as well. Like other people could look at it and say, oh my God, I would never do that. That's like so hard. But for me, it's like, oh yeah, it's it's not easy to do, but it's something that I like to do. So then doing something strenuous is also like it's a thing of perspective. So if it flows for you, then it can be hard, or it might be like, let's say, hard physical labor, but it's something that flows with you, that's in alignment with who you are, because that's just what spins your wheels and what brings out your highest potential in that moment.
Well, in regard to what I was saying about mastery and artistry, mastery, I would suggest, is something that's like measurable, and artistry is everything else. So like you can be a master in, technical craftsman-like work, and the mastery of it is like those very technical details that people can really
But they
like
overlap
measure
too.
or
Mastery
define. Whereas artistry is like that whole other side of things that it doesn't seem to make any sense until it just turns out beautiful, and so I think it's a combination of both. And so like if you said that part of the process was, like I start off by meditating. Well, meditating could be a lot of things to a lot of different people. And so that's kind of the artistic art area versus like, I do 25 push-ups and then I do this.
Yeah, that's what I could relate. Like, well, that's what I think it is when you guys talk about process. Is that I do 25 push-ups and then, I climb a set of stairs.
Martial arts mastery just came to my mind. There you have art and mastery in one. and that's an interesting thing to me. Is like or self mastery also is something that some of buzzwords that just came up to my mind when you were talking. And you said mastery is something that's measurable. So what defines a master then? What does it mean to be masterful, or to have mastery over over something? How would you define mastery?
Well, I think it is one in which, so like, like you can tell a master craftsman, in their work, it's very visual. There's things about it that make it, very unique, and like maybe it's a style, but that style is like categorizable versus like something that may be artistic, that it doesn't really have any particular uh, pattern to it, but it just works, you know. So, but again, that's like where like the like a master carpenter, for example, might like have a situation in which like they want to put a set of stairs in, and it's like pretty much cut and dry, but like the stair height is too high, so they've got to like create some kind of new method of like getting up in that space, and like they might create something that's like a circular you know staircase or something like that that fits into that space, but it's like, wow, it's so magical how they came up with something that's it's so unique, and then that might actually be the thing that makes that house or makes that building so cool, is that one little thing you know
So what you described right there to me is the doing plus the being, is the
yeah
doing in alignment, in flow with the being. So it's not just knowing how to cut out a step, which is always the same height. So no, it's like, oh, like if you observe a master, like if I think of a master, it's like it's somebody who is in flow, who is in sync, who is aligned with what is, who is there's like there's some spirit to it. It's not just doing for the sake of doing, or for the sake of a check, but like a paycheck in the end of the month. But it's like, he's in flow. He's doing exactly, or she, what they're supposed to be doing, and like things just flow. And there's more than just the physical, fixing up our stairs. But wow, you can see that his vibe, his spirit, is incorporating in that stair, or in that piece of art, or in that painting, or whatever it is, or in the movement, or in the music, so there's, and others can recognize that, and others can see, oh, that's more than just, like the song. It's like, wow, there's something, it touches me, even if you can't describe it, but you can feel that somebody else's flow and alignment with things is being transferred through that staircase.
Yeah, and it's like I've seen this a lot in construction, where something is built and it's built wrong, and like it's like halfway through the project and they did something at the beginning that was wrong, and now you've got to get somebody that is like a master, that can like say, okay, that's what we got, and then he just kind of works his magic and comes up with some kind of plan that the architects and the engineers and everybody says, yeah, okay, if you do that, we'll approve it. And it works. Whereas everybody else would have just been, we're going to have to tear this building down and start over again, And so, there's a lot of different things. Mine just happens to appeal, or, my construction background again. But I know we're getting short on time. We didn't do a fallacy of the week, and I apologize for that. I just I ran out of time, so we don't have a fallacy of the week. We'll just have to do one next week, or let's talk about what we've got in store for next week. Agnieszka, you want to chime in here?
Yes. I'm just going to double check the spreadsheet here. So next week we have a talk about cognitive distortions with Mr. Flynn, how to tame your inner critic, and are your negative thoughts controlling your life? So that's the Monday and the Wednesday shows, and yeah, that sounds pretty cool to me. Taming my inner critic would be a good thing. Because I recently found out that I thought it was not so critical, but dismissive is still not perfect. Willow?
I was going to agree with, not with your statement, though. I'm sure you are probably correct. Yeah, I could use some help with my inner critic because, I don't know, it's kind of one of those moments where when I talk about being blended with parts, where you don't realize you're being blended, and so it's really hard to separate. So it'd be interesting to see a third party and how that plays out. I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah. And anytime your inner parts are confused, just scream at them. Group hug. I don't care who's angry at whoever. Group hug works really well.
Amen.
I was wondering how people could get in touch with you and find out more about the course and the work that you're offering, because I'm surely excited about that, and I would want to know where to go and how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, I've been doing this kind of probably a year and a half now as a course. I had spent a couple years working on what I was thinking was just going to be a book, but I really wanted to have a real world application of this. I wanted to go through experiencing this and having other people experiencing to know that it is something that's very workable. And so at this point, I've had about 20 people go through the course, and I'm pretty solid. Actually, that would be like what I would call my 1.0, ethical emergence 1.0. I'm on ethical emergence 3.0 at this point. And so
but how can they get a hold of you?
Well, I want to try and get that started in June. And so the best way to probably get a hold of me is, I don't know, if they go to Raising Excellence, is there a way that they can?
Yeah, they can send us a message. Right now it's just Facebook, but they can send us a message, and I don't think they have to log in to send us a message. But okay, we're gonna update that. Also, you can update your bio maybe before June.
So we're definitely we're gonna try and do that too.
I'd love to hear some of the maybe just in a nutshell, like what was some of the feedback that you got, or of the shifts that people made through that course. Is there something that come to your mind right away, like how they were impacted and how they shifted with the kind of knowledge that you and wisdom that you transfer to them?
I think in a lot of cases, like I would say probably the most predominant thing is making decisions that they might have been putting off for years or even decades. those things that have been sitting in the back of their head, but they just never took the time to really address those things, or like look into who they actually are. A lot of definitely had people that changed occupations, or changed relationships, or, but effectively created within a very short period of time, created a whole new reality for themselves by simply addressing something that more than likely was a burden that was really weighing down on who they are. But yeah, I've had a lot of, and I've got more than my share of testimonials that I can put into place, and we are building a website for ethical emergence, so that's going to be upcoming. But again, yeah, I think the best way, as far as if you're interested in that, is to work through raisingexcellence.live, and or through the Facebook or YouTube thing, put out a comment or something like that. We'll try and hook you up with a email. And then, like if you're a BitChute person, you can check out me at Mike on Fire. And you can actually, if you go through there, you can follow links, and you can actually schedule some time with me through my Calendly link.
And cheers to Kelly.
Hey, Kelly. Okay, so I think we're going to close it out now. Thank you, everybody. I certainly hope this was helpful. This is kind of the first time I've run through this in a public format and talked about this thing. But it is definitely something good for me as well, because I'm kind of in that process stage where I'm kind of, tuning the buttons on what this thing is. And so, I'm excited about this, and, what's ramifications are for other people, and then how that combines with everybody else's work here, because we all offer a great deal of value, and together we have quite a package that we can deliver to anybody that's, suffering from something or has a problem that needs to be solved. Our times are Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:05 p.m. Eastern time. And thanks so much.
Eastern North America.
Yeah.
You have to specify, because there is other Eastern times at play.
I did not know that.
I think there is also Eastern Australia time.
That would make sense why I got a lot of things messed up.
And isn't there also like a difference between Eastern Daytime and Eastern something else?
Standard time.
Standard. Yeah, so that's the daylight savings, where they cut off the bottom of the blanket and sew it back on the top. We'll update you when that changes. Don't worry. Right now, 7 p.m. Eastern North America, 7:05. That's when we're going to be broadcasting for the next foreseeable future. And it could change at any time. But it probably won't. No.
In any case, thank you, everybody, for taking the time, and certainly appreciate your attention. If you have any questions, let us know.
Absolutely.
Or any inquiries.
I'm going to play the outro now. Are you guys ready?
Okie doke.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.